What's up, guys, and welcome to the Huddle. We come at you every week to discuss how to maintain forward progress in your flooring career. This applies to flooring, but also plenty of other careers. Today, we're going to be talking about, handling your finances and what to do with the money that you earn, and kind of just best practices for where to reinvest that money. And what we have found through my 20 some years of being in the flooring business, and a lot of mistakes I made and a lot of lessons learned. And got Daniel and Jose with me as usual, and they're going to share some of their experience and their journey as well. We'll have time at the end here for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, type them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. So as usual, guys, how's the week starting for you?
Busy. I think we've kind of hit a bottleneck right now, with everything's kind of the end of every month, everything just kind of going together just like that.
Yeah, and summer's here, so if you're in schools, you're getting that work, trying to get that work done.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging. Just a note to everybody that I looked at the architects. We had an event at one of my facilities here in Wichita last week, and talking to some architects, and the reporting they get looks like it kind of echoes what was said at Surfaces this year, which is architectural billings are significantly up all the way through, and look to be staying up all the way through 2023, with all the talk of recessions and the economy and all that for construction people is a big plus. So hopefully that stands true. That being said, gentlemen, handling your finances, I took a few notes and wrote down a few things that I think we were discussing before this. It may seem a little elementary sometimes, but had I been told some of this stuff when I first got started, I think it could have, well, I know for a fact it would have helped me a lot. So starting off, you start earning money and you get some cash flow going. What do you do with that money, right? Invest that money in yourself first. You can't be the leader of a company or other employees and things like that if you're not the person that can, currently, if you're not the person that can be that guy, you have to become that guy. That only happens through education, a lot of personal development. So, I won't tell you what genre or whatever, but there's, read books, take courses, learn. So I believe heavily that you have to become the person you want to be to do the things you want to do. And so, if you want to be a star, track runner, you're not going to just magically, it's not just magically going to happen. You have to put in the work, the training, the learning. And when you get real good, you start to learn these little techniques that make you faster just from, your form and things like that. So not that I'm a track expert, but that's the best analogy I could come up with off the top of my head. Number two, and you guys could probably speak to this as good as anybody, and probably better than most, is your equipment and tools. How can those items, how do you see those items like benefiting? Why would you say that's so important?
It promotes efficiency, man. Like, you don't have the right equipment, then it's going to take you twice as long, and when we started out, and we just talked about this too, is the D cup, as simple as it is, and to put it in perspective, is the very first time that I've ever seen millwork base, and I was responsible for doing it, I had zero knowledge on it. And we went out, and I'll never forget the place. It was called Marshall Manor. Went out there with a utility knife with zero clue. And right on the box, it shows a miter saw. And the gentleman on site had this nice, expensive finished carpenter miter saw, and he would not let me use it. We didn't have it, and we had to knife everything. Did it look good? Yeah, at the time it probably did for what I could do with a knife, but once we got a miter saw, it made it so much easier. And then all of a sudden this D-cut comes out, and we don't have to clean up, and I can drag it around, and you could show anybody how to use it. So,
And you didn't need power.
Yeah.
correct, you didn't need power, and you weren't cleaning up the mess. You weren't putting plastic up a wall where you were cutting to protect, some wallpaper that had texture to it. They're just having the right stuff and the right tools goes alongside with the right education and how to use that tool. And man, does it speed things up.
Where
And,
did you see the D-cutter first?
I don't even know. I think Daniel just had mentioned something about a D-cut. We probably went to like an open house and seen it, and we probably dismissed it like, oh, no way, that's no way. And then the demonstration was like, really? So
Yeah, I seen it at a show. I can't remember what show it was, but I seen it at a show first. So like go to open houses and go to shows if you can make it to them, because that's where you're going to see the most innovative stuff. One of the things that I can think of is the welder. Leister came out with the 90-degree angle tip. That little thing turned out, I bought it at a show. It turned out to be absolutely wonderful. It was a great buy.
I was heat welding some flash cove yesterday, and the toe kick was only about, I don't know, it was less than 4 inches off the ground, I think. So if I didn't have the little gun as well as that 90-degree tip,
Yeah, getting under cabinets.
yeah.
Getting under cabinets in a medical facility.
Yep.
Sometimes those toe kicks are in farther than normal. And I tell you what, it's come in super handy. My point is just like, keep your mind open for tools. If you can make it to some shows or open houses or get into your distributor and asking them what's new, it can save a ton of time.
Right.
Telling
you can even take investing in the tools like simple back to the knee pads. Invest in a good pair of knee pads, save your knees. For a long time, I didn't wear knee pads to the point where it looked like I had 2 kneecaps, and I thought that was normal. No, and then you invest into some knee pads, and then you're like, man, my knees and my back don't have to feel as bad as they have been.
Yeah, if you're early on in the career and you see someone with knee pads, just ask them. Like, even if you think you're against it, just ask them, because long term, holy smokes. Same thing with a pouch. My first 6-7 years, I didn't carry a pouch. I put it in my back pocket. Put knives in my back pocket, or lose tools here, leave them in a classroom down the hall around the corner.
Do you ever cut yourself?
Oh yeah, cut the bottom of my butt cheek a few times. Yeah, cut a hole in the pocket, and the carpet blade would fall through and cut my calf when I was walking. I'm like, oh man, I guess it's time to switch pockets.
I wish they had a leather pouch I could stick this thing in.
Man, that would have been great, right? How convenient. So
I mean, not only will investing in equipment make you faster and more efficient, it will save your butt cheeks.
Yes.
Apparently. So the next one, and you guys, have invested in your employees. I believe that's up there on the list. Investing from a training's perspective, but at the end of the day, it's caring about them, caring about them, trying to help them succeed, advancement opportunities, and how can you, for us, it's like several years ago, it's been probably 5 years ago, we started offering full health insurance paid by the company for all installers and that work for our company by the hour, that are employee installers, company wide. That we invested in that a half a decade ago or whatever. So investing in your employees, will create loyalty, but also, we want the best life for them that we can, help them to achieve. We can't
Yeah,
force anybody to achieve, but setting them up for success as best as we know how, and listening, and hopefully having some open dialogue. So your employees, obviously, having good employees that can perform the duties that you need them to do, whether it's install or in the office, an admin, those are good places to put your money as well.
it's hard not to, right? Because if you have a bus and you're the driver, but you don't have any wheels, you gotta find the right team to help you maintain that vehicle to get from point A to point B. And if you're not willing to put some kind of investment towards your employees, I highly doubt that they're going to stick around for you. And on the other hand, individuals, entrepreneurs, gentlemen working for themselves and maybe making a transition from self-employed to employee, there is a difference, right? Like when we made the transition, it was a different mindset. We were still thinking like we were self-employed, and we're treating the whole thing like we were self-employed. But once we started transitioning, started thinking more employee classification, and then everything else that came along with it. It started opening up our eyes to a couple of different avenues that we weren't taking. But we did have the luxury of working with a company who did classify us as employees, and they did have benefits, and can't say that we have original ideas, but it was great to be able to work with a company like that to give us some ideas. You could take away the things you do like from situations like that and apply it.
What was your what did you guys, when you first started out on your own, you had helper or a couple helpers or whatever, what did investing in your employees at that time look like? What was that? You're a new guy, your new company, you're going out, you got an installation business, you're going to start subbing through shops, maybe, grabbing some work direct. What did it look like for you guys to invest in employees at that time?
I think it was more of a thank me in my check type mentality. Hey, thanks, man, for doing a great job. Really? Thank me in my check. You know what I mean? So it was more just adding additional funds to their check or
early on, it was a lot of giving them rides too, picking them up from their houses and stuff like that.
You take what you can get.
So it was working with them to help them be successful in one way or another, whether it's getting them to the job or which I'm sure everybody on this call, both us and anyone watching that's in flooring, can probably relate to going and waking up an installer to get them in the truck and get them in the job. So hopefully, that climate changes a little bit. My hope is that the installation community starts to really take some steps forward here to get themselves trained to utilize the tools at their disposal to get trained and start caring about your career, not just about getting a check at the end of the week. A check is great. That's how we prove that we have given somebody value, is the money. But really the goal has to be something a little different, maybe bigger, which is being the best that you can be at whatever you chose to be in. I mean, the fact is, if you're in flooring, you chose it. I know a lot of us believe that flooring
That's debatable, man. A lot of the people that we've met along our journey are in the trade. They would say by accident, right? The flooring chose us, but those guys have been in it for a lot longer than we have, and they made some good decisions early on. And I can't say that we're not taking advice from them, because anytime we're sitting there learning, even from you, we take advice from you as well, because you've already been through it. You've been through something we haven't, and
me as well.
It's nice to be able to.
So we've got yourself, your tools and equipment. your employees, I put savings next. Like at some point you have to start socking a little away. You got to start putting a little bit of money away. There's other way, I'm no, financial advisor, but I can tell you saving, close to 10% of your money each week can come in real handy during a market downturn or a few weeks of a job canceling on you or whatever. So, for your own well-being as well as your families, I honestly believe savings is a piece that nobody really likes to save money. I mean, we really enjoy spending money, but how much do we like to save money? I know that can be a struggle, but if you can make it automatic 10% out of your check, whatever you earn go into savings, or somewhere around there, that's been a good practice. I didn't honestly start doing that until probably, it's kind of almost sad to say, probably 10 years ago. I was probably 32 or 35 before I really started putting back any significant amount of savings. I didn't have anybody tell me how important it was. I could have, when I was making $600 a week, I could have put $60 a week away. And, but I didn't really understand the importance of it. So if you on this call don't understand the importance of it, I'm just telling you, it can change your life. You can really, if it keeps going great and things are going up and you don't have to tap into your savings, that's awesome. Now you have a little nest egg that you can invest in some manner, get with a financial advisor and start talking to them. But don't think that you can't go talk to a financial advisor. Like that's another big piece. Just go talk. They're free to talk to.
Yeah, they all want to give you that information for free. And then once you're to that point, you're like, all right, I can't do it by myself. That's where they start making their money.
Yeah, I'd challenge everybody on the call. Go call a financial advisor tomorrow. Just talk to them, chat with them. I know the stock market and the economy sucks right now, especially equities and bond rates aren't great either, which is an anomaly in our economy. Both are going down right now. But this is the time when you start investing that you make your money in these downturns. You invest now, it has to go back up eventually. So, yeah, so, and that kind of flows right into the next one, which is investments. In that case, I'm not talking about, financial instruments as an investment. I'm talking about investing back in your company and technology or more employees or more, we already talked about tools and equipment, but a little bit more like that specialty equipment that can make you some major money. We bought a demo machine, probably it's been 8 or 10 years ago. It's made us a ton of money. And so I know other installers that have made that investment, 40 grand or thereabouts investment into a right-on demo machine. I know guys that, they reach out to me, they're like, all I want to do is demo. I'm like, too bad.
Yeah, I know.
I need you to install still. But
That's
yeah,
the real thing.
Yeah, but what I mean is you guys invested your time and effort into technology to make your communication better. That's what Go Career is all about, is a piece of technology that can help you run your company and your installation labor better and keep better track and make sure you have the right talent on the right job. But there's plenty of other software out there, from different accounting systems to project management systems. We use a product called Structure, which is an accounting project management software. Also, we use Slack for inter-office communications to help keep our email inboxes just for clients and things like that. So we're not emailing each other back and forth. I think there's 30 some employees in our company right now. All those emails back and forth. It's, we use Slack to keep our inbox clean. You guys use, I believe, Microsoft Teams for a lot of stuff like that too. I mean, that had to be an investment in time and effort to put that together.
It's
It was.
ongoing.
Yeah, it's
It's
constantly
ongoing.
evolving, just
Yeah.
like, anything in business. If it's not evolving, that means you're doing something wrong, right?
Well, you're not pushing the envelope much if
Yeah.
in that case, but yeah, I agree. Well, that's where the progression here is. You start off as an installer, you start with tools, you start with, and then your first employees, and now you're investing in technologies that'll help your company grow. Maybe you got an office manager or somebody, an assistant of some sort that's helping you, and you need communications pieces. So just keep your mind open. The real thing here is one of our core values at Stewart & Associates is to stay innovative, that we want to be on the forefront of technology and things that are going to make our company and our employees more productive. That's a constant search. There's always new stuff coming out. There's always new things to do. It's a constant search to find the items that match what your need is. And, I encourage everybody to, stay on the forefront, keep your mind open for different things that can make you better.
Right. And it's a mindset switch too, right? Because when we started, it was always, well, I can't afford this. I can't afford to classify these guys as employees. I can't afford this piece of software. And then, yeah, we can't afford this demo machine. And then it gets to a point where you're like, I can't afford not to do this.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah.
I can't afford it. I remember, I'm going to go way back when we started and we were excited, but when we bought our first welder, heat welder, like that was expensive to us. I think we spent just over $4,000 or something, right around $4,000. And we didn't really have anything. We didn't have any employees yet. And I remember we bought it because I was like, if we don't have it, I can't go after that work. Like I can't get the work and then say, now we need this because now we got to wait because I need to get these tools. And it was like, put it in your pocket, put it in your toolbox, and then say, yes, we can do that. But we bought it, and the first thing that we went and did was a 3-foot repair seam over at a hospital. It was a saddle in the doorway.
Both of us went.
We both went. We were excited. Let's check it out. Let's
Huge profits.
Yeah. But it's just, it's nerve-wracking, man. It is, man. And you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel until you start getting that vehicle in motion again, right? So
that's the idea that's why it's an investment, right? That's the idea of investing, is delaying your gratification for that, whatever you're investing in. So that's whether it's money or a tool. A lot of people buy something just like you that it maybe not pay for itself next week. Now, I got a great story about my demo machine. I did pay for it in 1 week by landing a big job. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on vacation in the Bahamas and I called my rep and I'm like, I need that machine delivered tomorrow. So I was in the situation you're talking about avoiding, and I had to pay extra. It was a nightmare, but we did get the job done. It went really, really well. And that one job paid for that machine. So there's opportunities out there to keep your mind open for that stuff too, if you're willing to invest that money. In fact, our batteries just went out on that machine, cost $6,000 for new batteries.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this, we are lost without that piece of equipment.
We have guys
We use it so much.
To tear it by hand. We have you should tear this up by hand. I'm like, yeah, 4-inch strips or 4-inch scraper or 2-inch strips. No way. I would quit. Yeah, we know.
Yes, you would.
Yeah, and that's why we have 2 of them now too, is if one goes down, we still got that backup.
Yeah, I need to get another. You guys are ahead of me on that.
It's crazy. Like just taking
I need the plan B.
The job sites sometimes, just the amount of work that can be done.
Yeah.
Well, and you do, that kind of goes back to some previous huddles we've had. It does add to your professionalism. You pull that sucker up in a trailer and you pull that thing off. People are like, these guys know what they're doing. Or you got 10 guys with clamp pullers and, spud hose trying to tear stuff up. Or we used to call them idiot sticks that weighted, spades that you'd use to
Oh.
tear up VCT back in the day. Well, so last I have, I put it last because it's the one that I think probably turns people off the most, but it really probably should be number one, and that's taxes. I cannot tell you how many stories I've heard of installation companies going under or coming to me for an hourly job because they didn't pay their taxes. They didn't track them. They didn't have a way to keep up with what they were earning so that they kind of had an idea on what to save back or pull back for taxes. And this is separate from your savings. You know, if you're doing well as an install company, you're going to be, I mean, get with an accountant. That's another thing. They are cheap when it comes to, let's call it a life cycle cost. Like, yeah, they're expensive by the hour, but when you need them for that hour, they're cheap. So get yourself set up correctly and make sure you're pulling, you know, you have your accountant helping you understand how much you need to keep back on taxes and make your you know, your quarterly payments or whatever. However you guys want to do that, that's up to each individual person or each individual company. But I would tell you, if you are not keeping track of that and making it a priority, I didn't early on. I got in tax trouble, bad tax trouble. I was able to pull myself out of it, but I know I've sat with you guys and talked in the past. I know you've had your problems. So this isn't something that it's almost like every installer I've ever talked to almost has either major tax problems currently or has had them in the past. I had them in the past. You had them in the past. Listen, everybody.
Right.
Pay your taxes. Find a way to charge more money. Take some of the techniques we talked about before about making more money, increasing your value to the industry so that then you can demand more. And by all means, you know, a good place to start is around 25%. You could be all the way up to 35. You know, I think the top tax rate's like 39. So I guess you could get all the way to that level. You have to know kind of where you're at. But if at the very least you're doing 25%, get with your accountant, make sure you got your deductions, you're taking advantage of all the tax code that's there for you to take advantage of. And then after that, maybe you're less than 25, but at the end of the day, if it ends up at 30 or 35, you're almost there. You don't have this huge tax bill.
Right.
So
this goes back to the whole software thing too, because you can keep track of that stuff for your account to actually let you know this is how much you should be keeping, you know, back. Because if you just got a shoebox full of receipts that you turn in at the end of the year, you're not.
Yeah.
He can give you a number, but is it accurate? Who knows?
The shoebox full of receipts. That was me.
And that's a benefit of working, you know, for example, in Go Carrera is you have reporting on the backside of that at least allows you to understand. It's not an accounting system, but it at least allows you to understand what you've billed and what you've been paid, and you can track that in the payments account, everything. So at the very least, you know what your revenue is, and you know, in the future, we're going to give some ability to track expenses. So a very low level type of accounting. But if you're just you or two guys and a helper or something, it will suffice and really help you keep track of where you're at. As you get more sophisticated and you need to have a full on accounting system like QuickBooks or something. I know a lot of companies use QuickBooks. I believe you guys do, don't you?
We use QuickBooks, yep.
Yeah, and that's come a long way. So yeah, you're right, Daniel, 100%. Like you're going to have to invest in technology to be able to, you know, accurately track where you're at, both from an expense, deductions, all that kind of stuff, all your shoebox full of receipts.
If I could go back in time, and do it all over again from day one, even if it was just me and Daniel starting out, we should definitely just have that just in case, because you don't want to wait till you need it, then learn how to use it, right? You want to make sure that you understand the inner workings of it. So that way, as you grow, your knowledge grows with it, and you're able to make those adjustments. It's even if you're a sole proprietor, one individual, like, make it easy on yourself, man. That's a super easy investment.
Yeah, I mean, that's what an investment is putting something into something before you need it a lot of times.
Or you can
Not
just spend all that
necessarily like
time-
I did the demo machine.
or you can spend all that time at the beginning of every year trying to get everything together, and 2 weeks into trying to consolidate all your paperwork and your receipts, when you could have spent 2 weeks finding more work, or 2 weeks working on a project. You'll save yourself a lot of headache. That it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the 6 biggest items I have on my list. And you guys had a lot of the same stuff, it sounds like. I think that one really important thing to understand is don't spend all the money that you make. There's plenty of places to invest it that'll make you more successful long term, help your image, help you earn more money, be more efficient. All these things are really important when you're running a company. And the last thing I'll say is that there's so many installer companies out there, installation companies, that do not operate as companies, that do not even view themselves as a company. Even if you're a sole proprietor, you can be a company. You are the company at that point, but you have to operate like one. Again, that's an investment. If it's just you and you plan on growing your installation business to 40 guys and being a super sub for, medical facilities or whatever your goal is, you have to start operating as such. Don't wait until you have to do it to do it. Do it ahead of time.
We did.
Yeah.
Like we did. Don't do what we did.
We're trying to help. We're trying to tell you guys the stuff we did wrong. So, well, let me, what's your you guys got anything else to say before we open it up for questions?
No, all I was going to say was you learn more by other people's mistakes and your mistakes than you do by all your successes. So, it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen on accident.
People don't see the failures behind the success. They just see the success. So just know that's one thing that I like to say is you got to stop saying that I can't afford it, and you got to start changing your mindset and saying I can't afford not to do something, because it's like you said, it's an investment, and it's just going to grow from wherever you're at now.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy on what to do with money, because money is like fire if it's in your pocket. So if you don't get it reinvested to make more of it, you end up not having any. I've watched it for too many times. So my hope is that any install companies out there that are listening, that you make sure you're operating as a company, that you are reaching out to accountants and getting your deductions and take advantage of being a company. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can learn. It's just a matter of investing that time and effort. So let's move on to some questions. See what we got here.
Okay, we had a question come in. How do you recover or bounce back from a year of not correctly handling your money?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to bounce back. What really that saving is, I think, what kind of saved us at one point, because we were at least smart about one thing, is we got to put this money away, taxes and savings, and then once you figure out, hey, we're not doing too hot, and then you got to fall back on that savings.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of take a look at the big picture and be like, all right, this is what wasn't working, this is what has to change, and then you have that cushion in order to be able to do that.
And if they're referring to like taxes and all that, as far as falling behind and not paying their estimate or their quarterly, not a lot of people do what I did, but I called them and said, hey, Mr. IRS, I think I owe you some money. And they're like, yeah, you're under the radar. Of course you. And so I opened up that can of worms myself, right? But
Well, kudos. Sorry to interrupt you, but kudos, because
yeah.
that just keeps snowballing and snowball.
So,
They're not going to go away.
Yes, I was definitely, there was a lot of years involved in there, right? So the way that I personally did it, because I didn't want it to affect anything else that we were building or my family, my future, is I made phone calls and I made payment plans with the IRS. I basically put myself out there, you know, vulnerability, right? Humility. I said, hey, I've made some mistakes. I'd like to correct them, but I can't afford to correct them right now today. What can we do so that way I can start correcting it, right? And you might not like what they have to say, but you know, they really want you to correct it, so they are more than willing to work with you, whether you do it on your own or hire an attorney to help with some of those corrections. It's just a matter of taking that initial step, but just be ready to put yourself in a position you're going to be uncomfortable for a little bit.
Yeah. Just to add to that, don't run. Don't avoid.
They'll find you.
Face it head on. They will find you. Face it head on and make a payment plan. You know, I went through it and I sincerely wish I would have had some guidance and not went through it, but I did. And it's about making a payment plan, and then you make a little chunk of money on a good job and you pay the sucker down, and you know, you just chip away at it. The real key is to not run and face it. And Jose just gave you a great example of that. Call them. Like, you know, if you haven't paid your taxes.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you know how much to pay, but you know, if you haven't filed in 3 years or something, like, go ahead and call them. I know a guy that, even though he did do that, you know, it was a bit of a struggle. But he's faced up to it and went ahead at it, and he's about there, or he is there. So those are that's from a tax standpoint. If you have a rough year, like, I'm assuming that question was about taxes. But you know, if you have a rough year where you're not really, you know, making money, it's time to back up, assess, and address the problem.
Right.
I encourage people to be warriors there. Like, sometimes it gets tough. You got to get up early and stay late sometimes to make things happen and make the money that you need to make to be a profitable business. And sometimes you just got to strap up the boots and get after it.
And we're in the age right now to where there's groups out there, and reach out to someone, ask a question. Everyone is more than willing to give information. We've all been through something. So
Yeah.
just post in a group, hey, this is what I'm going through. And then, like myself, there's been plenty of times where, you know, because sometimes you go in these groups and people just want to BS with comments that don't matter.
Yeah.
So I'll just reach out through a message and talk to them that way. That way they know it's like, I don't want to deal with everything that's going on, but I just want to let you know this is what's going on. This is what we did, stuff like that.
Yep.
And it might not be relatable to anybody, right? Because, you know, the direction that we went, and we might have taken the long way around compared to some people who might have been able to find a way to streamline some results. But, you know, that was the only way for us at the time. It was our only path at that time. And once we started the path, it would have taken us longer to veer back to start another one. So we just pushed forward.
Well, the key sounds like is just that. You pushed forward towards resolution. So
Yeah.
see what other questions we have here.
Okay, there's another question asking, what would be the first step or resource that can be used to get ahead of them for their financial responsibilities?
To get ahead for their financial responsibilities?
Yeah, what would be their first step or their first resource that they can use?
Talk to an accountant. We already kind of touched on that. It wasn't until like our accountant actually helped us to restructure the way that we were set up. So that way we essentially save a bunch of money on taxes. And that money help offset the cost of the employees that we had. So just, going to them, and like I said, he talked to us for free before we were like, all right, we're on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want you to
information
be
is
their
there. You just have to
client.
be willing to add.
And he didn't put us in the position to where he was, the deductions kind of were overbearing. It made us look like our annual income was lower, right? Because our net worth, you want to make sure that you are doing it in a fashion so you can still go qualify for a loan, your personal income versus your business income if you go that route. Is good enough to get the loans and make your net worth enough to qualify for them. And I mean, obviously credit score is involved, but that's another talk. Just understand what you're doing and what your end goal is. And then they'll lead you in that direction.
And then the other thing I would say is it goes back to the software. We use QuickBooks, but there's plenty of other things out there. You can go use an Excel spreadsheet or Google Docs, but tracking what you're making and what you're spending. So you have to know what's coming in and what's going out, because if you don't, a lot of things get lost in translation.
Mhm.
So the more information that you track, the better off you are in the long run to know when something's going wrong, or that's really it, when something's going wrong. So that way, all right, something has to change ahead of time before it starts getting too bad.
And it's never too early to start that.
No, and you can
Don't
do
wait,
baby steps too, right?
Yeah, don't wait to do it. Like, it's never too early to start tracking what you make and what expenses you have, and then what's left over, and talking to an accountant so that you can reduce your taxable income is important. But I would say, like, probably the most elementary answer to that is what we've talked about in this call. Save 10%, put back 25%, and make your quarterly or some standard pay into on taxes, and invest in equipment and tools that are going to make you more money. I would say what we've talked about in this call is a great spot to start. Even if you don't talk to an accountant, if you track your expenses, track your income, save some money, and put back money for taxes, you're light years ahead of where I started and what I did for the first 5 or 6 years.
Right, and that's where I say it's baby steps, because you just have to start getting in a rhythm of doing these things in order to keep on doing them, right? You got to make it a habit.
Yeah.
And then once it becomes a habit, then it's easier to go back and be like, okay, now I need to track this, or now I need to break down, these costs per job. And then we're still not to a spot yet to where we feel comfortable where we're tracking enough stuff. So it's just continuously going and being like, all right, once I get in the habit of this, I can go back and then start tracking the next thing. So that way, next year at this time, I'll know where I'm at with that.
We'll just keep improving, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
like, do it. Don't think that you have to wait till you're going to be perfect at it to start, get better each year. Eventually you get there. We had a comment come across here that says contractors need to understand their overhead first and foremost. They need to know what it will cost to live. You have to put all this together so you can know how to charge appropriately and figure out your taxes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, overhead and cost expenses is important. Early on, you may not have much true overhead. When I started, it was just me and a helper, and I started subbing when I actually opened the company, and we got a little office. Now we got overhead, and we had to know what our expenses were. And when you get to that point, it's good to figure out what your break even point is. How much do you need? How much revenue at your regular profit margin? How much revenue do you have to make to break even? Now you have a goal of where to break even. And then north of that is profit. We found that as we grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger, our profit timeline got farther and farther down the year. It wasn't until the last quarter of the year that we actually started to pull in the profit for the entire year. Up to that point, even though we're profitable, we're making money every month. The bottom line is from a yearly basis, you have a break even point. And I would encourage anybody, know what your break even point is, and then you kind of know where you need to drive north. Because at some point, if your overhead are somewhat fixed and you increase your revenues versus that stagnant overhead, that's when you hit profit. So any other questions? Oh, we got Kyle raising his hand. Go, Kyle.
Well, that was my comment. So I can't turn my video on. If you want to turn my video on, I can you can see my face. But
awesome.
No one needs to see your face. No one needs to see it.
Hey, I don't disagree, sir. So what I was going to say is you were talking about early on, you didn't have a lot of overhead, and I slightly disagree with that, and I think it's overlooked. Okay, so when I'm talking about overhead, your truck is your overhead, your tools are your overhead, your trailer's your overhead, the employee is overhead. Like, there's way more expenses than what people are looking at, in my opinion, especially if you do have an employee. Right now you're adding in workman's comp, matching taxes, you have your general liability, you have any other insurances for your truck. I put insurance on my trailer, I've got insurance on my tools. So all this stuff starts adding up, and it's more. Like, I think a lot of guys look at it and they're like, okay, well, I need to make $75,000 a year, and that breaks down to X amount of dollars per day. Well, that's great, except you forgot about the taxes and everything else. I want to be able to buy a new $30,000 used truck every 5 years. So that's built into my overhead. I'm not paying for that out of my $75,000. That would be foolish, right? Because it's the business, it's the business's truck. So it needs to pay for the $30,000 truck every 5 years. I have my tools on a 5-year replacement plan. If I take care of them, can they last longer than that? Sure. But we have to know what it costs, and then that money's there. So if I'm not
How'd you go again? How did you go about that? I completely agree.
Okay.
How did you go about assessing that early on when you had a van and some tools, or a truck and some tools, and you figured your replacement costs for tooling and things like that, which is very much a overhead item that typically comes a little later, but certainly the vehicle and the tools and such, that's pretty cool idea to put together a expense, so to speak, for tool replacement.
Yeah.
How'd you go about that?
So I'll be honest that I came up with it maybe like a year ago, and it was just, I have a knack for numbers. Like, early on, I was asked by somebody that I was in a BNI group with, and they were like, what's your like break even point for a day? And I was like, it's like $500. They're like, well, how do you know? And I was like, I know. And so I went and sat down with my bookkeeper, and it turns out it was $500, but that was breaking dead even. Like, taxes were covered, expenses were covered, everything. And so as I got better and I started charging more, I really started looking at it, and I kept seeing people, what do I charge? What do I charge? Right. In all these different groups. And so I developed a spreadsheet, and I was just like, okay, folks, I need help. Like, what are the expenses that it costs you to run your business? Like, start throwing everything in the kitchen sink at me. And I put together a comprehensive list on a spreadsheet, and I figured out if it was an immediate expense, then that comes out as a business expense that year. If it's something like your tools or your truck and you're having to save that money up year over year, then there's a column in it that you can mark it as taxable because you're going to pay taxes on that money sitting there. And so it takes into account, 20, 30 things. And if you have things that you need to add, you can add them in. If you have a shop space, you can put that cost in. If you have multiple trailers or something, you can sit there and customize this to it. And it was just me thinking about, what does it actually take to run a business? Because when you're talking with contractors, great artisans not always great at business, and
Yeah.
a lot of things go overlooked. And I really enjoy that side of it. And so I like trying to put together these tools to help further other people to be more successful. There's no reason that installers should be living paycheck to paycheck.
None.
It's there's no excuse in my mind whatsoever. And this
Let-
is a tool to push them forward.
Let me caveat to that is to say that, as we've talked in this discussion, that it's never too early to start. What I'm trying to encourage people, especially installers who are getting going, is they may not have a truck, 2 trailers, and all the tools.
Mhm.
Understanding your expenses should start the day you decide to start subcontracting or going out and doing, performing as a company. If you're doing that, it's never too early to start tracking expenses, tracking revenue, and understanding the difference. You have some years of experience to fine tune that stuff. I've got 25 years, and we have, accountants that we know exactly what we have to bill every month to break even, and anything north of that is gravy, baby. Right. And we understand those numbers, but don't think you have to get, become some big company or some big, even installation, like you have to do $1 million a year in installation to do this. You need to do it regardless of whether you're billing out 200,000 a year, or if you're billing out 10 million a year. You need to understand your expenses versus revenue.
100%. If you don't understand what you're bringing to the table, and you don't understand where the money's going, then how do you know what to bring in? You're just guessing at everything. And that's you're not doing yourself any favors in that aspect.
Right. It's actually saved us
track everything.
to because I have a spreadsheet for employee costs, right? And it's actually saved us, because it's like,
Sorry,
well,
guys.
why do you guys have to charge this much hourly? Well, it's because this employee costs this much, and if I don't charge you this much, I'm pretty much paying you to go work for you right now. That doesn't make any sense. So it just goes back to the more you track, the more you know.
Yep.
No, I agree. I don't think that's done enough, right? I think doing time studies is utterly important to a contracting business, just because you get, you go and you look at a job and you're like, that's 10 minutes. That'll take an hour. That'll take 15 minutes. And then you go and do it, and it was 5 hours total. And you bid it one way, and then it took you a totally different amount of time. The numbers don't work. So
Yeah, and it certainly
you have
gets
to
more
track it.
sophisticated when you're doing per job. Like if you're going out to a project and bidding, a home or someone, when you're working direct with, whether it's the homeowner or direct with GCs or things like that, it frankly, the sophistication that's needed at that point should go up. It's going to take, more, you have to start thinking about, if you're going to work with, GCs or something like that, to pay every 30 to 90 days, you got to start thinking about your backlog and your, cash on hand to be able to finance that work. And that gets really complicated, because you're talking about getting with banks for lines of credit and all this kind of thing. But what is important, I think, is just getting the baseline when you first start out. If you baseline this thing and you track all your expenses, you track your revenue, and you know what your break even point is, that's a great starting point. And just like Kyle's mentioned, you can get, and Daniel and Jose, you increase your level of sophistication with this as you grow, but don't wait. Look, that's the biggest thing I've seen. I've seen guys get, 8 or 10 guys underneath them, and they're pulling $2 million, $3 million in installation only and they got way behind because they never did any of this tracking, never paying their taxes, didn't even know what it was going to cost from a tax standpoint or what their obligations were. So yeah, great stuff, Kyle. Thanks for the comments, man. I think that's valuable input. And at the end of the day, my encouragement to everybody is really to get started right when you start your business, and don't wait till, like I did, 4 or 5 years later, I'm trying to figure everything out.
No, thank you. Thank you for letting me on. I appreciate it. I think you're right. The earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. And you're talking about some things that I know even Daniel and Jose have going on, and they're looking at how do we track our expenses and put, figure out cash flow for the next 30, 60, 90 days and book projects around that. And like you're right. It's never too early to start, in that you need to understand your business, that you opened a business and now you have to act like an actual business owner. You're not an installer anymore. You want to be an installer, go be somebody's employee, because that's the only time you're an installer, in my opinion.
I'll hire
Even
you.
if yeah. Even if you're subcontracting, you still own a business. And
Yes.
so like sorry, you own a business. You need to act like you own one. The store handing you a work order doesn't mean that you're just an installer. That's not how this works. So
Correct.
it's all great
Yeah.
advice.
And that's where, quick plug for Go Carrera. The fact is when you get a work order from a Go Carrera company, there's a negotiate button there. Use it. If you need it, use it. Negotiate the work to what you think you can do the job for. Too many shops try to prescribe the cost. Our platform has the change order and negotiation features for that reason. Is you are a company if you're a sub. If you have to make more money, now who knows what shop there's several companies on the Go Career platform, but so who knows whether or not you're pricing yourself out or not. But the fact is, if you have a good hammer rating, a good kudos score in the system, you're going to have more power to negotiate and make the money you need to make from any shop. That being said, guys, thanks everybody for joining us today. We've ran out of time. I want to give a special thank you to Daniel and Jose for joining us again. Kyle, thanks for your input. We super appreciate it. And everybody who had questions, come back next Tuesday. We'll be, I forget, what is our, do you remember? I forget what our topic is next Tuesday, but join us at 3:00 Central Time. And we appreciate everybody. And I hope you got a little bit of value out of this.
So next week it's learning and excelling.
Learning and excelling. We'll further that one a little further description by next week. So,
Oh, yeah.
all right, everybody. Thanks. Be on the lookout for an email for next week's huddle. Thanks for joining.
See you guys.